Okay. Hello, everybody. I hope everybody's doing well, having a good week and generally having fun. As you can guess and probably tell, I'm trying my damnedest to do a few more live streams, uh, especially apropos of make it a bit more of an effort to, bring the channel a bit more back to life. Standing over it, pumping really hard at its heart. I go, come on, wake up. Well, that's rather my motivation that I'm desperately trying to wake up at this point. So yeah, and I mean, in all fairness, it's not too difficult to get motivated again, especially with the new year and 2024 looking the way that it does. Oh, I see. I need to set up a bit more moderation. Apparently. Messages from YouTube. I actually highly recommend that everybody at least give YouTube a bit of a try, posting their own videos and whatnot, just so you can see what it's like. And it's also fun. So, that's, and, getting familiar with what's going on in the background helps you understand what's your favorite YouTubers are dealing with. Of course, I am under the impression that some of the more popular streamers and YouTubers do have a few more tools than the average person, namely myself. So bear in mind that your dashboard might not look the same, and you may not have all the options highlighted. They might all be grayed out, but yeah. And Rex, yes, what did you say your gripe with smart atoms was? I'm actually going to get to that. So I made a screenshot of your message to me and whatnot, so thank you for making the point of coming. So first to start off, let me orient everything. So if you bear with me for a couple minutes, I'll set everything up. Yay, scary superhero staring at you in the screen. I don't imagine that anybody wants to wake up to this. At least on my side of the world, everybody's waking up to this. I believe it's roughly... Oh, gosh, I can't recall the time right now in other parts of the world. My brain is still a bit fuzzy. But yes, it's Friday for you guys mostly, and evening or late afternoon. So obviously with the Viltrumite video, this is me, sort of what I was trying to say right at the beginning of December, was me trying to expand it to different topics. I want a bit more feedback about what you guys think about these videos, mostly because I'm not entirely sure that going about it with a more slow kind of tone and lecturing kind of voice is the right idea. Because I feel that they have the potential to be a lot more entertaining and lean more entertainment kind of aspect of these videos. So maybe being a bit more animated is a good idea. But of course, if people are enjoying the more, steady pace of speech, then that's also something that I'm more than happy to maintain. Either way, the Viltrumites was just a topical thing, and I've been, after a conversation with a dear friend of mine a couple of weeks back, I'd been thinking that I should do superheroes, so thank you, Richard. He does eventually listen to this. So and these guys, the Viltrumites, especially being sort of analogs for, because if I recall correctly, the comics started in 2000, so I can imagine there's a lot of Dragon Ball influence in this. So I thought maybe I would use that to sort of mention Dragon Ball, but eventually I ended up cutting that from the script, and it just generally allowed me to talk about superheroes, which is not something that I think many people have done, at least not that I've seen. Lots of discussion about lore, of course, but the most recent videos that I could find about it and the most recent discussions I could find are many, many years old. And by that, I mean, like 10 years old. But yeah, moving on. I'm on the wrong screen. Here we go. Did that change now? There we go. Mostly I was focused on the Great Purge, and I'll get back to this. Oh dear, that image is wonky. I'll get back to this, but let me start by talking about the smart atoms. So it's not that I had a gripe with the smart atoms per se, but I wanted to talk because so when I was looking up how their powers actually worked, obviously I'm basing the video a little bit more on the televised series, you know, the animated series, which doesn't mention anything about smart atoms, and I didn't want to go into too much detail about something that was outside of the series, you know, outside of the animated series. And so that was my initial, like, I kind of don't want to mention this. The second thing that I wanted to, well, like, that gave me reason to avoid the smart atoms was, as you see, I refer to it sort of as nanomachines, and I don't think I was communicating very clearly to you about it at that time, which was that in contemporary fiction, in contemporary, like, fantasy stories, things are hand-waved with nanomachines. If you think about the most recent Marvel films, at some point Tony Stark just straight up invents nanomachines, and then that's everything. Then, you know, suits magically appear and they grow on the superheroes, and you know, it's just like weird visual fade effects, and everything's explained by it. Of course, nanomachines can do whatever. And my feeling was that it's a bit of the same with the smart atoms. Now, the smart atoms are things that don't actually exist as far as we know, similar to most of the things that I'm discussing. But because their effect is so completely and utterly, you know, it's all encompassing about what the Viltrumites can do, it seemed a bit less interesting to discuss it. Of course, we could discuss how the smart atoms work, and generally, as a consequence, how atoms work. But a lot of it would have been, I think, a little bit too heavy for the series as I'm trying to present it. I wanted to have it, the video focus on a few, like, core topics, which was, in this case, the longevity, the strength, and the what was the other thing? Flight. And then just, you know, talk about it in those kinds of ways. And if you go back to the video, I end up having to sort of hand wave the flight aspect and refer to Mass Effect. Mass Effect was such a pain to try and get that clip. Spent however long re-downloading a Mass Effect Legendary Edition, only to then not have it start up because I put some of EA's little application thing to sleep, and I didn't know about this, and there I was faffing with the registry and doing all sorts of weird fiddly things to the game file locations. It was those 10 seconds took so long. Actually, it took an embarrassing amount of time. But anyway, back to the smart atoms. So basically, yeah, the smart atoms I felt were, at least they answered too many questions too easily. Now, of course, one of the issues is that, actually, you know what? Let me write down my ideas. I'll go back to my Photoshop window. One of the issues is that you know, when it comes to any kind of science fiction, you'll have sort of the realm of the known, you know, things that we know, and things that we don't know, and in between there's sort of like a bit of fuzz. And this fuzz sort of gives us the ability to say, oh, you know, this is how it works, and you sort of fill it with technobabble. So in the case of going back to the Marvel stuff, you'll have, like, you know, this is the suit is, we know that suits are strong, you know, suit is strong, and it can fly, whatever, and we know that this is controlled with nanomachines. Okay, so we go nanomachines. And then through technobabble, it interacts with something that we don't know, and we get this is not a very good illustration, but basically, you know, the nanomachines are just the magic, right? Now, of course, with my videos, I am also doing the same thing, but what I hope to do is make this gap a little bit thinner, just a tiny bit thinner, and also take it from a different approach. And I felt that the talking about the smart atoms was just too wide a gap to cross. And again, for my sake, it's a bit boring. I don't know. So yeah, I have my own version, that which I call the reality spectrum and the reality equation. Okay, so I mean, if you're willing to share, expand upon that, I don't mind having a bit of a discussion with you. If you want to do it now, just send a message. Sorry, I don't know actually. I haven't set this up to actually include other people in a voice chat right now, but I'll do that for the next live stream, just in case it's in case somebody wants to hop on. And of course, people like yourself who I've seen about quite for many years, I don't mind suddenly inviting onto a voice chat. So, but yeah, please expand on that. Mind you, this little illustration that I've done here is very, very ad hoc. It's not necessarily that I've conceived of it in this way myself, but it's basically me just trying to make this unknown gap smaller, and that's why I discuss of things in the way that I do. So yeah, I hope that answers the question. Oh no, I don't want to make a new layer. Solid color. There we go. Because I accidentally drew on the background, because I'm very foolish. So yeah, that's basically that with regards to the smart atoms, at least. I really maybe should use that as an opportunity to talk a little bit about how atoms work. Apropos of my last stream, where I was talking a bit more about living systems. Mind you, I did skip a step with that last stream, which was the let's go back to Photoshop, which was the phospholipids. This was actually an important aspect of that, because you've got the glycerine, sorry, and the phosphate here, and the lipids, and I didn't explain why it actually becomes a sphere. And quite simply is, and if you guys would allow me a moment, basically these parts are going to move away from water, right? And so they're going to hug each other, as I explained. So you're going to end up with a bunch of them together like this. And then a few are going to be together like this. But of course, if you look on the z-axis, so that axis, they're still exposed to water. So then you end up getting layers of these things on top of each other. And the best way for them to ultimately cover one another, the lowest energy state, is into a sphere. So basically, they'll not just go next to each other longitudinally. Yeah, terrible pronunciation, pardon me. Layers of irony. But also, horizontally and vertically. So that's what ultimately causes the sphere shape. So that's one thing that I feel a bit embarrassed about neglecting to mention. Anyway, so moving back to this part, I was a little bit concerned about talking about genocide and eugenics in the videos, because I do know that some people do have the propensity to be a little bit sensitive about such things. Nevertheless, I thought that it was quite an interesting way to conceive of the manner in which something like this could come about. And because a lot of the rhetoric that you'll see on the internet is that eugenics is unscientific, which is, I mean, it's immoral, certainly, but not unscientific. And that's the one thing that I was a bit tempted to address, because we apply eugenic principles to animals all the time, as I mentioned, like dogs, etc. So just the morality of it comes across with the application to human beings. So my hope was that I could actually get that right. get it right in communicating the ideas a bit more. Nevertheless, it was a bit of a dodgy topic to cover, and YouTube didn't get angry at me as I thought they might, because you hear a lot of things about YouTubers complaining about how they're treated by YouTube's terms of service and whatnot, and that was a bit touch and go there, but it came out all right. So yeah, and I hope everybody got to learn something and at least think of things in a different way. I'm still not exactly sure how you would ultimately select for superpowers. Of course, a critical point here is that they were all superpowered, right? They all had the ability to control the smart atoms. Actually, sorry, let me take a step back and explain that generally the smart atoms are atoms that can remember a previous state that they were in. So they basically, the Viltrumites also then have full conscious control of these smart atoms, and they produce them in their bodies, and this is what gives them their superpowers. But again, as I mentioned just now, that's more like nanomachines. So I didn't really want to go over that too much. Nevertheless, the eugenics system of creating superpowers, that's a bit... It's an interesting prospect, because as I mentioned later in the video, the Bene Gesserit, keep saying Jesuit, the Bene Gesserit of Dune actually use conscious controlled eugenics to try and attain their messiah, and at least in the fiction of the narrative it does work, remembering of course that if we apply fictional concepts to real systems, that is a reification fallacy, and we want to kind of avoid that. But it just begs the question whether such a thing is possible. And I don't think in the system that they use over here, this violent conflict will actually result in that. It'd just be chaos. It would probably leave them no better or no worse off. There would not be any change. In fact, this Great Purge is more of an ideological purge, actually, because obviously you can imagine that those Viltrumites who did not want to participate in their empire and conquer all other planets were the ones that disagreed. And they said that half the population was left over. And you can imagine about 50% of the population would disagree with an empire. So the Great Purge was more along the lines of that, is what I'm thinking, an ideological purge rather than a physical, genetic purge. Of course, it would be mentioned to younger Viltrumites that, this is what happened, we culled the weak, etc., etc. But, ideology at the end of the day. But, yeah. So that was generally my thought with regards to the Viltrumites and how they went about their Great Purge. It's very interesting. Again, I got going over the comics, because obviously I came into the series through the animated series, so I wasn't entirely aware of the age of the comics and whatnot. So when I saw that it started in 2000, I thought, okay, yeah, maybe there is definitely a Dragon Ball kind of vibe, because if you look at a lot of the images, it's dark-haired people flying through space, and that's definitely Dragon Ball. So yeah, anyway, that's besides the point. Now moving on to, so yeah, nanomachines is basically like magic. Now one of the things that I wanted to mention in the stream here today was that magic is actually a perspectival kind of thing. So it depends on where you're standing that makes something magical or not. And basically, the word magic is just sort of a word that denies the possibility of something existing. Basically, it's you see something happening that you can't explain, and you're like, oh, it must be magic. There's no causal chain that you can conceive of. But of course, the person who performed the magic the wizard or the elf understands exactly how it happened, and so for them it's not really magic, it's just physics. So yeah, the part of, I guess, what research and science is doing is it's changing magic into physics. And this is actually one of the reasons that it's you find like a lot of Catholics historically were scientists, like Darwin himself, for example, just because it was a lot of scientific pursuit was envisioned as discovering the word of God, discovering the works of God, sorry, and what He's done. So that's why you basically, yeah, all of the great physicists of beyond 100 years ago or so had a very strong religious bent to their lives. And I mean, even Einstein was yeah, what was that quote? Something along the lines of he was saying that he doesn't believe that God plays dice. Obviously he was Jewish, of course, but the point remains. He conceived of it as understanding the works of God. And I guess, in that sense, the transmutation of the works of God into physics is one of the things that we have done throughout history. So, an interesting perspective, I think. But over here we have Perdita Street Station, which is, it basically goes hardcore on that idea, where all the things that we would consider magic in a fantasy universe is just physics, and it follows a character as he attempts to restore to a sort of a Garudian, an anthropomorphized bird person who has had his wings lopped off. The protagonist attempts to restore flight to this individual, and he's sitting in his apartment doing physics experiments and trying to figure out how he can make this wingless person fly. It's a very interesting story. I was almost tempted to use that as the example for a flight instead of the Mass Effect example, but this was a bit more of it's a bit more of an obscure book, and I wanted to go a little bit more for something that people could relate to. Hermeneutically speaking, we're trying to extend understanding to people, and that was the best way. Mass Effect was the best way to do it. I highly recommend reading this book as well. It is a bit long, that being said, and there's a lot of, I would say, I wouldn't necessarily call it philosophy, but contemplation. There's a lot of contemplation in this book about the nature of art and all that stuff. So, give it a look-see. It is a series. I haven't read the rest of them, just this first one, I should say. It's also, it was released also in about 2000, I think. I can't really remember, but it's not recent. It's a very good story. And again, it will, if you go into it with the mindset that in this world magic is just physics, then yeah, it's quite nice. My favorite approach to this idea is having creatures of magic breathing the same air as creatures that follow biological constraints. I'm not quite sure what you mean. Would you mind expanding a little bit and clarifying? Because what you mean, like the regular biological creatures are following the same, existing alongside magical creatures? Is that what you mean? So basically, they're beholden to the same physics, but the magical creatures have a little bit extra to them. I guess, yeah, that's how I interpret what you're saying. So yeah, if you'd be so kind as to clarify a little bit, am I on the right path? While I'm waiting for your reply, if it does come, I think that a lot of the Monster Hunter style games, so like Dragon's Dogma, the Monster Hunter series, there was another one. They go Outward, that game. Have that kind of scenario where you've got lots of little monsters that have, some are just regular things like ostriches, if I remember at some point in Outward. That's a regular creature, but then of course there are the fantastical and gargantuan creatures, and in fact also the Souls-like series, they will have low level enemies be wolves or some kind of regular creature, and leave the more higher level enemies to be fantastical ones. And I do agree that that's actually a very nice kind of contrast. It lets you know that the contrast between regular biological creatures and then magical creatures within the same world creates a little bit more of a grounded feeling, and it'll let you know that the creatures have a potential to be real, of course. The magical creatures, that is. So, at least if that's the sentiment you're going by, then, I definitely agree. It's very, very, very interesting. Actually, I think there was another... There was a topic within the Perdita Street station that discussed teratology. Terra means monster, and you got the suffixology is the study of. So they were talking about kind of fantastical creatures. At one point, they go to a carnival in the novel, and as you do at carnivals, you find freaks of nature and whatnot, and the protagonist is quite interested in this kind of thing. Of course, his interest was purely driven by the idea of making things fly again, but still. One of the punishments that they use in this particular novel, because the author was very clever and he focused on only a few aspects of the magic system that he had built up. And one of those aspects was the ability to sort of merge otherwise incompatible things. So some of the magic, what it does is they could fuse like a person's arm to you. They could graft it onto you, and they actually use this as a punishment. So I remember one woman who had killed her child had then the dead child fused to her body as a reminder of, by way of punishment, and this was to remind her not to do this kind of thing. Or some people had like bits of metal or something or other fused to them, and I thought that was if we had the ability to do that, that would definitely have been a punishment at some point in our history. Thank God we live in contemporary times. Things are damn sight better than what they otherwise would have been. So yeah, mostly also with magic systems, I think speaking narratively, setting up a single rule that deviates and then like exploring that one rule in all of its permutations is also a good idea. The general rule to this, I think you could find in Harry Potter, where there's not actually a lot of various spells. They sort of allude to the various different kinds of magics and things that you can do, but there's never like a complete list of things. And they mostly rely on spells that they learned in the first and second years, like Expelliarmus. That's like right up until the end of the series. That's what they're using, Expelliarmus against Avada Kedavra. So yeah, that's good narrative design in my opinion. Moving on. I completely forgot that I had this BitChute account, and I have no idea how the video got on here. It was actually thanks to this woman, Valkyrie de Fang, who signs off as Emma, that I understood that this was here. It's very... Basically, what had happened was that I've been getting messages from BitChute, especially after I started uploading again. And I thought, oh, okay, this is just spam. Little did I know that 5 years ago or so, I must have linked my YouTube account to BitChute, and the videos have been mirrored over there. So I don't know, if you guys are interested, you can also go over to BitChute to follow. I completely forgot. So again, thank you again to Valkyrie de Fang for reminding me of my embarrassing connection to BitChute. Not embarrassing connection, embarrassing forgetfulness of BitChute. So yeah, the videos are also on BitChute. Though I see that the shorts don't really come up as shorts properly, so that's something to be aware of. And yeah, that's pretty much that. The overall, you know, I want to try and use more contemporary kind of fiction to explore more topics, viz the superhero discussion here. So hopefully we can see a little bit more of that. And again, anybody who does listen, you know, should I put up a poll? Maybe I should put a poll. But anybody who does listen, let me know if you would like to see a bit more of a different tone to the discussions and the videos. And I think I will leave it there. So thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you again probably next week at the roughly the same time and same place, hopefully with a bit more to have a chinwag about.